On April 25th, 1945, as the European phase of the Second World War drew to a close, the Allies liberated a concentration camp called Ordorf Nord, which is located just outside the city of Gotha in east central Germany. It was not a large camp. It contained the bodies of about 3,000 people. Some of them were buried and some of them were not. I want to share with you the quote from a visitor to that concentration camp. I visited every nook and cranny of the camp because I felt it my duty to be in a position from then on to testify at first hand about these things in case there ever grew up at home the belief or assumption that the stories of Nazi brutality were just propaganda. The gentleman who uttered those words was former President Dwight David Eisenhower. And he spoke those words after visiting that concentration camp in 1945. It has now been some 60 years since the horrors of the Holocaust came to an end and the defeat of the Nazi armies in Europe and Asia. As the years have moved on, there have been growing numbers of those who deny that it ever happened. And over the same time, the numbers of the first-hand eyewitnesses have dwindled. Aside from the photographs and the written records that we have of those days, there are only a few who yet remain, who saw what happened and can tell you in their own words. We are doubly blessed this morning, therefore, to have with us, to have the honor and privilege of having one of those eyewitnesses with us. A man who was arrested and thrown into a concentration camp at age 19. And why? Just because he was Jewish. A man who suffered and saw suffering that staggers the imagination. A man who survived only by the grace of God. Let's give a warm welcome this morning to Mickey Montag. Mickey.
Ladies and gentlemen, I will greeting you with an Israeli Shabbat greeting, Shabbat Shalom. Peaceful Saturday. I am deeply honored to be invited to your congregation on the occasion of the Yom HaShoah, the day of the Jewish tragedy. In our long history, we have had many major tragedies. Naming the most known ones as Amalek, the Babylonians, Assyrians, Romans, Egyptians, Persians, Spanish Inquisitions, Russian and Polish pogroms, blood labels, expulsions, forced conversions, the Holocaust up to current days. A few days ago we observed the Passover Seder where we chanted, Mickey Bromden said, V'chol dor v'dor im rotzim lashmideinu, aval Elohim matzilem yadam. In English, in every generation there are those whose desire is to destroy and annihilate us, but God always saves us. During the Nazi Holocaust, God was a bit slow. It happened 60 years ago in my lifetime. And Holocaust deniers cropping up everywhere. They call themselves revisionists. They are organized, spreading falsified literature and books, holding conferences and conventions. The most famous propagandist, à la Goebbels, is Ernst Zundel. I also have to mention the neo-Nazis and radical Islamists who are bristling the internet with hateful provocations and disgusting lies. Unfortunately, the sickness of Jew hatred, which is contagious, elevated its draconic head again, especially in Europe. No group of this world has been a target of nearly as many accusations. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, we must learn and teach about the Shoah, and again, lessons to learn from it. And it is our obligation to talk about it before the last witness succumbs. And that includes the liberators of the camps, God bless them. There are generations of our innocent sisters, brothers, sons, daughters, and parents with whole graves, and their ashes are scattered on the fields of Auschwitz, Treblinka, Sobibor, Majdanek, Chelmno, Stutthof, Belzec, Babi Yar, Kamenets-Podolsk, Mauthausen, Dachau, and others. The Nazis didn't distinguish between secular and observant, between a simple person and a scholar. They're everybody with a Jewish or partially Jewish blood in their veins shared in the disaster. I am one of the still living witnesses, and therefore I am here to share it with you. My name is Miki Montage. I am a Jew, a Holocaust survivor, a retired officer of the Israeli army, a passenger of the famous ship Exodus. I was born in the Carpathian Mountains, which at that time was part of Czechoslovakia. In the late 1930s, Hitler's power was rapidly spreading. All territories occupied by the Nazis became a mortal threat to the Jews. In 1938, as a result of the famous Munich-Chamberlain Agreement, we were occupied by Hungary. At that time, Hungary was an ally of the Hitler government. Hungary was occupied with solving the so-called Jewish question. The Jewish question, they thought, will be solved by creating the Jewish law. And they created it. The proposition of that time Prime Minister Imre Bibel and later Pál Teleki was accepted by the parliament with the following restrictions to the Jewish people, which was implemented in stages. Licenses of Jewish professionals and businesses are revoked. Jewish actors, producers, directors, artists, screenwriters are not allowed to belong to the artistic camera. Numerus clausus and later numerus nullus of the universities. That means no Jew allowed for higher learnings. There were many assaults on the Jews. In the beginning of 1944, the Nazis arrived to Hungary with the purpose of carrying out the final solution of the Hungarian Jews. The next day, we were ordered to wear a yellow Star of David at all times on our clothing. They imposed on us a curfew. We were allowed to leave our homes only during certain hours. We were not allowed to own or listen to a radio. More laws and regulations came daily. One day, the Nazi authorities arrested all the leaders of the Jewish organizations. They held them as hostages, and the Nazis demanded a large amount of money to be handed over to them within 24 hours. Otherwise, they would be executed. We lost all our civil rights, and killing a Jew was not punishable. Despite the gruesome situation, our parents prepared the Passover table. As we took our places around the table, our thoughts were filled with fear. Our father was sitting at the head of the table and started to perform the Seder services. He lifted the wine goblet and recited the Kiddush, blessing of the wine. And suddenly we heard the disturbing shouts of the Nazis. They knocked on our windows, alarming us with vulgar curses. Our father's voice turned faint as he whispered his prayers, and our mother put out the candlelights. The Passover dinner was never consumed. This was our last Passover and the beginning of hell. After Passover, the Jews from the surrounding villages were forced to the ghetto. We, as many other Jews, were forced to leave our home behind. We were told that each person could take with him as much as he or she could carry with them. Some Jews committed suicide. At the end of April, the entire Jewish population of our city was taken to the brick factory that served as the ghetto. We were greeted viciously by the guard. Our father was kicked and knocked over his head. We stared helplessly while the young bastard kicked our father. In the ghetto, the loudspeakers were constantly blasting orders. Excuse me. Food was distributed once a day, soup and bread. No adequate hygiene accommodations, we had latrines, no privacy. Rich or somewhat rich Jews were constantly interrogated, tortured, and questioned. Where did they hide their money? Some were killed. We had no roof over our heads in the ghetto, and when it rained, and it did, we got soaked wet to our skin, and we shivered from long hours from the cold. For weeks, we lived that miserable lifestyle. In the second week, names of the first to be transferred were announced. Panic was said, there were cries. There were questions, no answers. Transports continued daily. Then our family transport was announced. We marched to the ghetto railway, to the railway. I remember our Gentile neighbors watching us to leave the ghetto. Some with satisfaction, some with tears, but I heard one voice that will always stay with me, a loud voice. God be with you. At the railway, we were brutally body searched. They looked for Bibles. When the search ended, we were ordered to march toward the freight wagons. They squeezed approximately 90 people to each wagon. We were counted like animal heads. The doors were locked. Children were crying constantly from hunger, thirst, heat, and discomfort. We were crowded like sardines. There was no decent arrangements made for people to relieve their waste. In one corner of the wagon, they placed a large bucket where we were to relieve ourselves without privacy. In no time, the sharp odor of urine and human waste became unbearable. The stench was felt all through the wagon. And in no time, the bucket of waste was overloaded and we were surrounded and sitting on human waste. We also had one bucket of water. It got empty after a short time. Breathing was difficult, as 19 people in almost a total enclosed enclosure, deprived of enough oxygen, which elevated our thirst, we felt dizzy and lightheaded. We traveled under such inhuman conditions for 2 days and 3 nights. It seemed like eternity. On the third day we arrived. The train came to a halt. The door was unlocked and we found ourselves surrounded by SS men with their constant barking vicious dogs. We heard frightening loud shouts, "Raus, raus, schnell!" ordering us quickly to get out and to leave everything behind. Mostly I heard "Verfluchte Juden," damn Jews. They quickly separated males from females to different lines. It happened so fast that I didn't have a chance to say goodbye to my mother. My mother looked at me with a sad smile, and it was the last time that I saw my mother. She was only 40 years old. The huge entrance gate of Auschwitz carried a large sign, Arbeit macht frei, work makes free. Through this gate, we rushed to the main section of Auschwitz. Here the gruesome ordeal of selection took place. They didn't waste time, as they started separating us in columns of left and right, link recht. Some couples were somewhat discreetly helping us. In some cases, couples grabbed an infant or a small child from his young father and handed it over to an older man who we guessed anyway, but at least he saved temporarily the young father. Temporarily, why? Because going to the right was merely a transit stop on the road to death. Or in some cases, the couple saw a young child in the age of 12 or 13. He instructed the child when he was asked about his age to answer he's 15 years old. A short time later, we knew the fate of all those people who were directed to the left. They were doomed to be gassed by the judgment of the Nazis. All the elderly, disabled, children, sick, pregnant women were disallowed of living only because they were Jewish or they had some Jewish blood through inheritance. For instance, Madame Albright or Senator Kerry would be considered Jews according to the Nuremberg laws. They were gassed, checked for golden teeth, which were extracted, then cremated. Some even didn't know that they were Jews. The Nuremberg law made them Jewish. The smoke and the nauseating smell of burning flesh was the flesh of our people. We were ordered in lines, 5 in a line, then we were led through the huge camp of Auschwitz. We were stopped, and after several minutes of waiting, a fat capo appeared and introduced himself approximately the following way. Achtung! Welcome, Jewish animals. Auschwitz is an extermination camp where all of you will die. Do you see the smoke emerging from the chimneys? Can you smell the burning flesh? It is the smell of fat Jewish animals, and you will leave Auschwitz through the chimneys. We are ordered to undress and to leave our clothes behind. We lined up before prisoner barbers. They cut and shaved the hair of our heads, underarms, and pubic hair. They robbed us from our human dignity. We were not anymore a person, but a number. My father's number was 49,302. My number was 49,303. They outfitted us with only one of each: shirt, underwear, striped pants and jacket, and wooden shoes. I stayed only a few weeks in Auschwitz. I was transferred to Hirschberg with my father. But during those weeks, we spent most of our time on long roll calls. Even a once-a-day meal was served in a roll call. We stayed in a row of 5. Each row received a bowl of soup. The first in the row had to take 2 sips, then hand the bowl to the next one for 2 sips, then for the next one, then for the next one, then back. Purpose: humiliation. As I mentioned, a few weeks later, I was transferred to Hirschberg concentration camp. Hirschberg didn't have gas chambers, but nevertheless, people died from starvation, malnutrition, being overworked to death, extreme beating, execution by hanging, and selections. There were different command works. My father and I were assigned to construction, digging and hauling. The nourishment was, I would say, nothing. Morning, a black liquid as coffee, no cream or sugar. Lunch, 1 pint of very thin bouillon-like soup. Dinner, 4 men divided a small loaf of bread, 1/4 of somewhat heavier soup like cabbage soup, 1 small cube of margarine. In summer, I picked grass from the field and put it in my soup to make it thicker. As a result of heavy work, poor nourishment and beatings, people were dropping. After a short time, we discovered we had body lice sucking our blood. We later found out that they planted the lice on us. They use the lice to create a serum against a certain type of typhoid. And let me tell you about a day in Hirschberg. Wake up 5 a.m. with whistles and screaming by the couples. Aufstehen schnell! Usually with lashing whomever they reached. A half hour and lousing, collecting lice. Everybody had a medicine bottle with his number on it, in which he had to collect lice from all bodies. The bottle was then collected by the capo, and if the capo wasn't happy with the harvest, we were beaten. Then washroom and latrines. 6 a.m. the hated roll call in a military order. The roll call was held, especially in winter or if it rained, as we didn't have warm clothing. After roll call, we marched to work in military orders. Our bladders and kidneys were so weak that during the march, walkingly we urinated several times. During work, we were often beaten. 5 p.m. marched back to the camp. I have to mention here something. In our group were many highly intelligent and professional people. But to humiliate us as we reached the gate of the camp, the capo yelled, Mützen up, head covered down, Augen links, eyes to the left, saluting the young SS Punk Guard. Arriving to camp after hard work, another roll call. Sometimes it lasted hours before the SS camp commander sobered up and appeared. Lack of nourishment, hard work, and beatings made it impossible to survive if you were not able somehow to help yourself. Hanging was another way of killing. Hanging was carried out also for minor offenses. It was carried out usually Sunday during roll call. It also served as an entertainment to the Nazis. Usually the victim didn't fight, he succumbed to his cruel fate. It was heartbreaking for us to watch it somberly. There were people who gave up and walked into the electric fence to be electrocuted. Another method of genocide was the randomly occurred selections. It happened during roll call. The camp commander with so-called doctors walked through the lines as we were standing, looked at us, and then with his finger he pointed at those that he found not fit anymore to work. The victim was immediately transferred to Block C and sent to the satellite camp to be gassed. As I mentioned, we were supplied only one set of clothing, therefore we were not able to wash our clothing wintertime or when it rained. In summer, we washed them with cold water only, as we had no salt. We slept on bunks 4 high, 2 blankets, no mattresses. During winter, we suffered from cold, summer from heat. Around late January 1945, we heard shelling from far away, and it got louder then. We hoped that liberation was near. We were sadly disappointed when we realized that our daily rations were sharply reduced and they ceased to supply bread and the soup got thinner. On a cold February morning, they woke us up for immediate roll call. The Scharfer declared that the camp is evacuating and we will start to march immediately. After roll call, the march started. At the gate, all of us received, surprisingly, a ration of bread. And here I have to mention, to put to your attention, no additional food or water was given to us in the next hellish 7 days. We marched without stopping from early in the morning until dark. It was a dead march. Who couldn't keep up was shot. I saw countless killing this way. I saw in the trenches countless bodies from marches before us. As I had wooden shoes, I got blisters from discomfort, and it got painful to march. From fear that I would not be able to keep up and would get shot, I threw away my shoes and walked barefoot in the February cold. I advised my father to do the same, and he did. My father during the war was supported by me And a friend of mine, a doctor from Kolozsvár, Klausenburg, to ease his work. We marched like this for 3 days with hot food and water. On the fourth day, we were forced to board an open freight train. Again, ladies and gentlemen, food and water was not supplied to us. And as a result of it, people started to hallucinate and died. The bodies were not removed, but one body was placed on top of the other. The train wasn't traveling at all time. The train was idling for long hours. It was a transit to death. On the sixth day, my father tried to tell me something, but I wasn't able to understand him. He was mumbling. I begged him to talk slowly, very slowly. I still wasn't capable to make sense of it. He was dying. As I was sitting near him on the ground of the train, I took him in my arms. I cried as he left this cruel world. I recited the Kaddish, the morning prayer. His body was placed on the top of the body pile. The same day the train arrived to Buchenwald. From our wagon, only 4 of us stayed alive. If it would lasted one more day, I wouldn't be here. Anyway, as I left, or better, as I crawled down from the train, almost dead, hardly able to make steps, somebody handed me a warm liquid. Since then, nothing that I ate or drank tasted that heavenly. The same man prisoner, whom I never met, never knew, and never met again, guided me to a shower. As I looked at my body in the shower, I saw on myself a skeleton. I was skin and bones. After a few weeks, my number was called again to transfer. I was transported to the extermination camp of Sachsenhausen, Oranienburg. Arriving to the barracks as I was placed, the occupants looked at me, they saw a living skeleton. They advised me not to leave the barracks because I would be gassed if the SS could see me. But from the severe malnutrition, I developed on my legs deep pussy carbuncles, which were extremely painful, and I couldn't bear the pain. Then somebody told me that a Jewish doctor arrived to the infirmary, and he was very helpful and discreet. No danger of handing me over to the SS. I had to go, but it was a risk. As to get to the infirmary, I had to cross the roll call plaza. I decided to go early in the morning when it was still dark, and return in the evening when it was already dark. But I miscalculated. From weakness and extreme pain, I walked very slowly. And when I reached the infirmary, it was already daybreak. Suddenly, I felt I was knocked to the ground. I looked up and saw 2 SS men with German shepherds. They ordered me to get up, which I did very slowly and painfully. They guided me a group of people, skeletons like me, standing in a column of 5 to be gassed. I was placed in the first row. The group was ready to walk to the gas chamber with me. Something happened that I have no explanation for. As I can evaluate and remember, about 100 skeletons like me standing in a column of 5. In the front of the column, 2 SS men with dogs. In the back of the column, 2 SS men with dogs. And I somehow suddenly decided to step over the walkway. I didn't know what I was doing. It was an instinct, like I would be pulled out. What happened? The dogs didn't bark and run after me as they're trained to do. The SS men looking at me, and they don't see me. I know it's unbelievable, but it happened. I was liberated by the Russian army. I was very weak, sick, skin and bone, with lice crawling over my entire body. When I finally became stronger, I decided to find my way home, hoping to reunite with any members of my family. I knew well I would not find my father, as he died in my arms during the death march from Hitchberg to the Buchenwald concentration camp. After a lengthy, tiresome journey, I finally arrived at my hometown. I went to the railway station daily, waiting for my family to arrive. From my entire family, only one of my sisters and a cousin came back. The rest of my family were murdered, tortured, and gassed by the Nazis. I experienced feeling of sadness, grief, and anger. I blame God for the horror committed against all people. Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. Oh my God, why have you forsaken us? And I'm arguing with God. Adonai, Elohim, Jehovah, Almighty God of the universe. How could you let this happen to your flock who suffered and died for centuries, sanctify your name? Yet despite all the suffering and humiliation, we stood by you because we believed in you. We introduced you to the world ethical monotheism. God, wasn't that enough? How could you close your ears to the screams and cries of your children? Men died praising you with the Shema Israel on their lips. Their final word trusting in you as they died in the gas chambers. And you, God, failed to hear them. And if you are indeed is this cruel, I don't want to know you. I turned away from Judaism. I became a non-believer. I left my city forever and settled in the Sudeten Czechoslovakia. I found work, I found friends. I avoided anything that was associated with religion. I liked to read the daily paper. One day I came across an article with a picture of young Haganah members defending a kibbutz in Israel. Seeing that picture, I was moved, and the same evening I decided to join the Haganah. I got in touch with the local Zionist authorities, and they smuggled me to Germany. I ended up in a DP camp, displaced person camp, and joined a kibbutz. My goal was to make Aliyah to Israel. However, the gates of Israel were locked by the British for Jewish immigration. Time passed without moving ahead, and the hope of reaching Israel was only a dream. I took matters on my own hand. I visited the Jewish agency in Munich and asked for their help. They questioned me, checked me over, then asked me whether I would volunteer to an illegal, dangerous immigration. I agreed. It was the Exodus. The ship Exodus, portrayed in the movie, isn't the Exodus that I was part of. Our Exodus had a completely different story and a different ending. I was on the true famous Exodus, which will always be mentioned in Israel's history. The original name of the ship was President Garfield. It was a small river ship capable of carrying several hundred people. In 1946, the ship was purchased by the Mossad as scrap metal for $60,000. The purchase was to launch an operation of unprecedented proportion that would draw the world attention. And it did. Exodus created the state of Israel in its own unique way. The interior of the ship was dismantled and bunks were installed from the top of the bottom as in the concentration camps. Each passenger received a daily bottle of water and a sandwich. The ship sailed from the port city of Sète on July 11, 1947. As I mentioned before, the ship was capable of carrying a few hundred people in luxury. The Exodus carried a load of 4,515 people. We were packed in like sardines in a can, not able to move about. You needed an appointment for the bathroom, and I'm not joking. As soon as the ship sailed, we were followed by British destroyers. On July 18, the British destroyers rammed the front of the ship, striking it from both sides several times. We put up a desperate defense from the upper deck. Our weapons were potatoes and canned food. 3 persons were killed and 30 passengers were injured. The Exodus was towed to Haifa, Israel, and we were forced to embark 3 prison ships. The name of my prison ship was Ocean Vigor. We sailed to Port-de-Bouc, France. The French government offered us citizenship if we voluntarily disembarked. We refused. We stayed on the ship during the July-August heat wave, despite shortage of food, extreme overcrowding, high humidity, and effectively no sanitary conditions. On August the 22nd, the ship sailed to Hamburg, Germany. There we were forcibly removed almost one by one and transported to a prison camp. The Exodus crew consisted of young American Jewish men. The captain was a 20-year-old Israeli. Several months later, when it was already legal, I volunteered for the Israeli army and made a legal aliyah to Israel. I am proud that I participated in the War for Independence in 1948. I took part in the battle for Tzemach, Upper Sejra, and the defense of the Upper Galilee. I was privileged to serve in the most decorated Israeli brigade, the Golani Brigade 12th Battalion. I was still in service in the 1956 Suez campaign. It was my greatest honor to serve as an officer 12 years in the Israeli army. In conclusion, I would like to return to the debate of accepting God. Several years ago, I gave a lecture about the Holocaust to youngsters at Temple Valley, Beth Shalom in the San Fernando Valley. When I finished my lecture, one of the students asked me a question that I wasn't prepared for. By the way, that question guided me back to God. The question was, despite so much suffering, do you still believe in God? I hesitated for a few seconds, then I answered, yes, I do. And I continued. Without the Holocaust, Israel would never exist. Because of the ashes of our families, Israel was born. The Jews of Europe lived for centuries under persecution and humiliation, and despite all the sufferings they will live. God promised Israel to the Jews in his covenant, and he prophesied in Ezekiel and Jeremiah, and I will gather you from the four corners of the world and make you a nation between the nations. And this prophecy was fulfilled in my lifetime. In 1948, when the Arab world attacked Israel after the Arabs rejected the United Nations partitions plan, Israel's population was less than 600,000 people. Israel was unarmed, without military tradition or knowledge. The Arabs outnumbered us 100 to 1. They were extensively armed with air force and all modern warfare equipment. In April 15, 1948, Israel was attacked from the south by Egypt, from the north by Syria and Lebanon, from the east by Jordan and the Iraqi Kauji Brigade. And by the miracle of God, Israel won. And at that time, I was stationed in Kibbutz Enged as defense. At midnight the same day, the Syrians started shelling us from the top of the Sosita mountain, trying to occupy the strategic kibbutz. We hardly had enough rifles and ammunition, but we defended the kibbutz and the Syrians retreated. And let me tell you about other miracles. How about reviving a dead language? How about turning a malaria-infested wasteland into an agricultural paradise, green and blooming? How about creating an industry without natural resources? How about the miracle of Six-Day and Yom Kippur War and other wars, winning despite always being outnumbered? How about populating Israel from the four corners of the world as prophesied, and Israel accepted and gave shelter to the young, to the old, to the sick, to the healthy, to the able and disabled? I witnessed all this in my lifetime, and I can say from the bottom of my heart, yes, there is a God. Who else could have created so many miracles, if not Almighty? It is written, Lo yanuach v'lo yishon shomer Israel. The defender of Israel will not rest, neither sleep. Ladies and gentlemen, I try to paint you a picture in a nutshell concerning the Shoah and its influence on my life. Frankly, it is impossible to explain the pain, humiliation, constant hunger, cruelty, grief, emotional, mental, and extreme physical torture. Despite the Nazi barbarism and portraying us as undermentioned, subhuman, we were humans under inhuman conditions. Regardless of horrifying experiences, we became productive members of the society, which proves that moral spirit is indestructible. I'm extremely proud that after the liberation, even the evil ones didn't commit atrocities against the German people. My anger wasn't against the German people. My anger was against the Nazi and fascist ideology and bigotry. Never again should any nationality, race, or religion go through such cruelty and horror. Thank you.
Thank you, Mickey, for sharing a touching and most powerful talk. For so many of us here, what you witnessed and what you experienced and what you told us about are things that are almost beyond our imagination. And Yom HaShoah being a day of remembrance, I must say that your testimony powerfully states what we must never forget. From the bottom of our hearts, Mickey, I would just like to thank you and Erica for coming and sharing this important day with us. I know I speak for many people here when I say that we have been moved by your story and moved to tears. My heart just aches inside. Yet we pray that what we have heard will really leave an indelible impression on our lives. And may God bless you, Mickey, in a special way. And we hope that despite the distance involved, you will come and visit us again. As a token of our appreciation, Mickey, the Ben David congregation is making a donation in your honor to the Simon Wiesenthal Center. And your story is nothing short of a miracle that you're even here with us this morning. Many people would say, where was God while all this was going on? To those people, I would offer this thought. Had it not been for God, Hitler would have been successful. What made Hitler decide not to cross the English Channel when the English were so weakened and so demoralized that they might have easily succumbed? What made Hitler decide to split his forces and open up a Western front, Eastern front, against Russia, where he could have so easily ignored them? What made Hitler pull his engineers off the pre-war development of a jet fighter airplane that flew first in 1939 and could have dominated the skies and caused havoc to the Allied air power? Certainly a major contributor to the ultimate victory. What made Hitler withdraw his support from the Nazi scientists who were working on the development of the nuclear bomb? What made Hitler sleep late on the morning of June 6, 1944, when the Allies landed in Normandy and could have been thrown back into the ocean had the Panzer divisions been called in soon enough, but the German generals were afraid to wake him up early. If you wonder where the Lord was during the war, perhaps you might ask yourself how some of these things came about. It wasn't because of God's lack of protection. It was because God got involved that evil was ultimately destroyed. As Mickey has said, the nation of Israel was built from the ashes of the Holocaust. Another miracle, as Mickey has said, that only God could perform. And miracle upon miracle, as we have seen, and the nation of Israel continues up to this present day. Next week, we will be celebrating this miracle of God. bring about the nation of Israel, a nation that had been banished from the face of the earth for 2,000 years and then appeared almost overnight. Today we would like to close our service by singing about this miracle, if you would. So I would like to ask you all to stand as we sing together the Hatikvah.
Yerushalayim.